This Halloween on Disney Unsolved, we're covering The Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman is the villain of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the second half of Disney's 1949 double feature The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. On Halloween night in the small colonial town of Sleepy Hollow, local schoolteacher Ichabod Crane was attacked by a figure riding a horse. This figure was dressed all in black, aside from the purple cloak around their neck. They carried a sword, and they had no head. The Headless Horseman. Ichabod Crane fled from the attack on horseback, trying to get to the safety of a bridge, which I'll explain in more detail later. While there were no witnesses to confirm whether Ichabod escaped the attack, the schoolteacher was confirmed missing the following day. The sensational nature of the attack and the subsequent disappearance of the town's beloved schoolteacher ensured that this mystery was one the town of Sleepy Hollow would never forget. But, due in part to the colonial town's limited investigative resources, the true identity of the Headless Horseman was never uncovered. With the knowledge we have today, let's go over the key facts of the case and determine whether we can put Ichabod's fate to rest. Ichabod Crane was not a native of Sleepy Hollow, but had moved to town earlier that year, taking a post as the only schoolteacher. His physical appearance was tall and gangly, with an excessively large nose. I can say that, right? Is it an objective fact that Ichabod's nose is huge? I think so. I'm keeping it in. By all reports, he was beloved by the people and was considered particularly successful with the ladies. Ichabod would often entertain multiple women at once at his house, and was rarely seen out in town alone, one of his usual companions being a short woman named Tilda. According to the town, Ichabod was also deeply superstitious. At the time of his disappearance, Ichabod Crane was enamored with Katrina Van Tassel, who was widely considered the most eligible woman in town because of both her beauty and her father's immense wealth. 8 other men in town testified to seeking Katrina's affection in the past, but during the time Ichabod was in town, his rival for Katrina's heart was a man named Brom Bones. Where Ichabod was gangly, Brom Bones was muscular. He too was a respected town figure, and he led a local men's club called the Sleepy Hollow Boys. Ichabod and Brom openly competed for Katrina's affection, and although Katrina entertained them both, witnesses believe she strongly preferred Ichabod Crane over Brom. A final note is that the Headless Horseman was well known in Sleepy Hollow before his attack on Ichabod, but the town largely believed the horseman to be nothing more than a ghost story. In a song the town would sing for fun on Halloween night, the Headless Horseman is described as a cursed specter who haunts people in search of the perfect head to take in place of his own. The song also mentions a specific bridge in the woods outside of Sleepy Hollow, saying that anyone who crosses that bridge would be safe from the horsemen. It is this same bridge that Ichabod was last seen riding for before he disappeared. Not everyone in town believed the Headless Horseman to be a trick of the imagination. Of particular interest, Brom Bones testified that he had been attacked by the horseman the year prior to Ichabod's disappearance, only escaping by crossing the bridge to safety. Now that we've established the basic story, let's take a metaphorical stab at solving the identity of the Headless Horseman and the disappearance of Ichabod Crane. The first theory is that Brom Bones took on the role of the Headless Horseman to eliminate his rival for Katrina Van Tassel's love. The motivation is certainly clear, as multiple eyewitnesses can confirm that Ichabod and Brom fought over Katrina, although it should be noted that their rivalry never escalated to violence before Ichabod's disappearance. Brom Bones was the one who brought up the Headless Horseman that Halloween, potentially to set up an explanation for the attack he was planning on Ichabod later that night. If this is true, then Brom's description of his own encounter with the Headless Horseman is likely false, an attempt to throw suspicion away from himself. In any case, Brom had the most to gain from Ichabod's disappearance, and indeed, Brom married Katrina a month after the attack. Brom Bones is suspect number 1. The second theory is that Ichabod Crane left town of his own volition, either because he escaped the Headless Horseman or because the Headless Horseman was never real to begin with. Ichabod was superstitious, and the Halloween atmosphere may have gotten to him in the woods, causing Ichabod to scare himself away. While it may seem unlikely that Ichabod would abandon his relationship with Katrina and his employment as a schoolteacher, Ichabod would have been more than able to find substitutes in another town. A sufficiently scared Ichabod might have decided that returning to the town of Sleepy Hollow wasn't worth risking another encounter with the Headless Horseman. Corroborating this theory are unconfirmed sightings of Ichabod Crane several years later in a few towns over. One traveler reported finding Ichabod married to a rich widow and the father to several children, but this report was never proven by the town of Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod Crane's superstition is suspect number 2. The third theory is that Katrina Van Tassel arranged the Headless Horseman's attack. As this theory goes, Katrina may have loved Ichabod the most, but she had no shortage of suitors in the village. Katrina may have arranged the attack as a test of Ichabod's courage, or his conviction to stay with Katrina. Supporting this theory are reports that Katrina actively enjoyed stewing the rivalry between Ichabod and Brom. It should also be considered that Katrina was quick to move on after Ichabod's disappearance, marrying Brom Bones after only a month. It is unlikely that Katrina herself took on the role of the Headless Horseman, but she had plenty of men around her that would have been willing to do it for her. If this theory is true, it's quite possible that Katrina and Brom planned the attack together, with Katrina urging Brom to take on the role. Katrina Van Tassel is suspect number 3. Unfortunately for all 3 of these theories, we have access to new evidence that the town of Sleepy Hollow did not. Namely, Once Upon a Studio, Disney's short from 2023. The short not only features the Headless Horseman, it also features Ichabod Crane, Katrina Van Tassel, and Brom Bones present in the same shot as the Headless Horseman. Given that Disney is a credible source of information in this case, we have definitive proof that the Headless Horseman is real, and we have 3 people guaranteed to be innocent. Is this really where I'm going to take this? I have to. The others are innocent. There's only one name left on my short list. The newly discovered data takes much of the weight out of the previous theories, but there is one suspect we have yet to discuss. Today's final theory is that the true identity of the Headless Horseman is Tilda. Tilda was one of the women Ichabod courted before he met Katrina. According to her own admission, she was on a date in the park with Ichabod the day he first met Katrina. From that moment, the only known interaction between Ichabod and Tilda was the night of the Halloween party, when Ichabod Crane and Brom Bones each attempted to dance with Katrina, passing off Tilda as the unwanted partner. According to eyewitnesses, Tilda appeared extremely eager to dance with either of the men, to the point of bordering on obsession. It's entirely conceivable that Ichabod leaving Tilda for Katrina enraged her to the point of attacking her former lover under the guise of the Headless Horseman. While neither Brom Bones nor Tilda suggested a past relationship in their testimony, such a relationship would explain both Tilda's equal obsession over Brom at the Halloween party and the Horseman's attack on Brom the previous year, if he had abandoned Tilda the same way as Ichabod had. It's also worth mentioning that Tilda was approximately 4 feet 8 inches tall. This would have made dressing as the Headless Horseman relatively easy for her, as the top of her head would line up with the horseman's shoulders. All other suspects would have had a greater challenge to hide their actual head while in the costume. Anyone is welcome to leave their theory in the comments below, but for now this case remains unsolved.